Hello, everybody. This is Basil with another Vibe Codalicious stream. Today we are going over something that we talked about in the previous live stream. So yesterday we went over a bug that we found in the final-ish version of this plugin, and that bug was that if the LLM does a tool call, and at some point you discover you want to prune the tool call out of the context, and you attempt to use the prune tool, it's not able to prune it away, and in fact the LLM sees message IDs which don't seem to exist. So it will first attempt to prune it, and that prune result will fail, and it might attempt a couple more times on random message IDs, potentially removing things from the context it doesn't intend to, but ultimately it will not be able to remove the tool call result out of the context. So yesterday I had the LLM dig into the issue. I pointed it at the original implementation of Context Bonsai, which is developed as a feature inside of the core of OpenCode. I didn't develop it as a plugin. So it's looking at the original implementation because we also ran into the same issue when we developed the original. So the solution we chose for the original is still in place. And I had it look at that and create a plan for fixing it in the plugin. And it did that, but its solution did not match the original because the semantics of the plugin and what we have access to in the internal of OpenCode is different. And the solution revolved around using string pattern matching, regular expression patterns, to look for something that says something like the attached image and then content after that, which is not, that wouldn't work at all for various kinds of tool call results. And I'm not even sure, like, I doubt that all tool call results would say any particular string that it could match. So I had to do some more digging. Another interesting thing that I found was that it kept coming to the conclusion that the LLM was hallucinating the message IDs when it actually wasn't. So what happens in OpenCode is that there's this message store that has the context, that has every single message that happened, including the tool calls and the tool call results. And within those messages are parts. The messages can wrap around a series of message parts, and every one of those parts has its own message ID. But the LLM APIs can't handle the part on its own. Every part needs to be inside of a message. So OpenCode takes its internal representation and wraps sort of a fake message around the tool call results that are composed of parts, and it creates a synthetic ID a synthetic message ID for this wrapper, because the wrapper is ephemeral. It only exists to satisfy the API. It's not in OpenCode's own representation of the context. So this ephemeral wrapper message has an ID that is not actually in the data store, and is, let me think about this. I believe that the parts themselves, the message parts, may also have a synthetic message ID that's just generated at runtime, and it's not really the true message ID. I can't remember the details there, but those generated message IDs are never persisted to the storage. So when the LLM hands the message ID to the plugin can't find the message, so it can't prune it away. So that's what we were dealing with. And theoretically, we fixed it. The LLM, I had it explore quite a bit. It produced plans that I rejected a few times, doing similar but slightly different things around the string matching. And in the end, I wasn't satisfied, so I let it down the path that I thought would work, which is during this plugin development, I've been digging in. So when it produces plans, I look at the plans and I understand them and I communicate with the LLM about them and I get it to explain more details behind the plans. So at this point, I understand that these synthetic message IDs are monotonically increasing. So they have the original message IDs, and then to produce the fake ones, they take that original one and they add to it. They append a monotonically increasing number, which means that in order to figure out what one of these imaginary message IDs are that don't actually exist in storage, I can find its parent just by looking at the next lowest message ID. So whatever message ID it gives us, if that message ID doesn't exist in the context in the message store, then just look for the next one, the one like immediately previous to that. So that's what I explained to the LLM, and then I had it do another research project to dig into the code and figure out whether that would actually work, and I had it validate the idea using fresh subagents after it created its plan. And then I went through the standard implementation planning process that I've gone through in these live streams, and it produced a plan. Then I had it implement the plan, and theoretically it's done implementing because it did not actually escalate to me. So let's see what we have here. I'm not sure why. Oh, it's thinking. Oh, it didn't finish because apparently the API was having issues last night, and it was going through these retry cycles. And after it went a couple times, it suggested that I change the model. So phase one is complete. Okay, well, this is going to go through a few iterations of developing this piece. Let me make sure that this video is running and we have live chat open. Oops. There we go. Okay, we do. And mute, get my chat window here. So since this this project is going to be going on a while, I will come back to the image to maze project. So this is how I deal with LLMs when they're off doing heavy work that's going to take a while to complete. I'm either working on another project or out having lunch or doing chores or something else. So I tend to have multiple projects going in parallel. So we're going to work on this image to maze project, and we'll get to that as soon as I get this chat window open. I'm not sure why, but it's not responding. I can't even activate the chat window. Oh, there we go. Now it's alive. And pop out chat. There, now I'll see if anybody joins and starts chatting with me. And I don't need the video actually going over there. I just want that chat window. Great. Now I'm ready to come back to here. So this is implementing the new version of pruning away tool call results. So switch over to the image to maze project. This is where we're doing a project so that if it's creating a program so that a user can supply an image, and the program will create a maze that looks like the image. Let me see. Which ones have I been using in this? Probably Claude. I want to do the skip permissions thing. Let's see. Oh, nope, not using Claude. Let's see if I'm using Kiro CLI. So one of the things, because I'm using multiple projects and I'm using multiple coding agents, I tend to forget exactly where each project is. Okay, this looks good. Oh, I bet it didn't actually resume. Usually in Kiro CLI, if you do resume, then it tells you what was happening before. So it looks like there weren't anything. I'm going to try one more thing. I'm going to use the resume picker. Now resume picker is supposed to show a list of previous conversations. Okay, so if we weren't using either of those, we were using open code. I wonder if we can use the one with the plugin. That would be nice. Let's make sure this is the right one. That's the original one. This would be, oh, nope, that is not the original one. That's the new one with the plugins. Okay, let's see if this works. Beautiful. And we have GPT 5.3 Codex selected as the model. Let's make sure it has access to those context Bonsai tools. It does not. Okay, that's fine. I'll continue to use this anyway because the plugin is under active development, and if it was actually using it, it might do weird stuff because the way I configured the plugin is I pointed directly to the JavaScript files in the project rather than the build output, which means as soon as the LLM makes edits to files, they become active here. And if we were to use one of the tools, it would use a potentially incomplete edit of the file. So this is fine. The other thing is, I want to use the session picker. Okay, the last thing we did was we did the planning, apparently. And then I asked it to read the orchestrator document. Great. So let's find out where the plan is. Agents, plans, image to maze plan. Great. Copy. And there's an orchestration state too. Let's copy that. Oops, I actually want to copy their full path. And also, oops, the orchestration. Okay, copy this, copy this. Where are we in this project? Oops. There's an orchestration tracker in that path. Here's where things stand right now. The active tracker shows the story progress at S2. S1 and S2 are marked as complete, while S3 and onward are not started. Let's ask it how many iterations S2 went through. So sometimes it will say it's complete, but really only the development phase is complete. And the way my orchestration, I guess, framework goes is there's a loop. The orchestrator sends it to a developer and then to a reviewer and then to a judge. And it goes in a loop until there are no more issues found by the reviewer and approved by the judge as something that it should fix. So let's just double check that S2 is actually complete. I'm asking how many iterations S2 went through. So these plans are divided into stories, and in this, it labeled the stories with a letter and a number. And I think the very first epic just happens to start with S. I don't think S stands for story here. Okay, S2 went through 4 iterations. Is it clear that there is a judge sign off for S2? Yes, perfect. Okay, so then the next phase, is just to continue orchestration. Okay, so that means this one is going to be going a while. I'm going to have it message me when it finishes the next epic, but keep going on. Here's the exact next orchestration plan from the current state. After you pick, I'll proceed. Why is it asking me to pick something? Recommended execution order once write mode is enabled. Okay. Run S3, the full loop to completion, then S4, full loop, and it says it can run in parallel with the late S3 review judge. I'm not going to have it do that. I'm just going to have it run S3 to completion and not try to do parallel development at this point. Update orchestration tracker to reflect the final S3, S4, and then open A1. Okay, so yeah, S is the first epic, A is the second epic. I didn't really investigate its reasoning for choosing these particular letters. It might be that the full epic name starts with an A or something. But that's what it's talking about with A1 right there. One decision I recommend before I execute, run S3 and S4, or one decision for you. Oh, okay, yeah, it's asking me to make that decision. It's recommending doing them in parallel. I'm going to say no, do it in series. And the message me thing is just that it's going to send me a Slack message. And I have a default agents.md that tells it how to do that. So it should be capable of that. It's asking me another question. This is, so I'm used to working with the Claude model. The Claude model doesn't stop and ask so many questions. I tell it to orchestrate the story or the epic or the entire project, and it just goes and does it. GPT is asking a lot more. Okay, given plan mode is active, I won't execute yet. Yeah, I didn't want to activate plan mode. You did that, buddy. Okay, here's the exact order, blah, blah, blah. If you want, I can draft this. No need to draft a message. Just go. If you need to escalate something, you can message me. Great. So it's off to the races. Let's see what's going on with the Context Bonsai plugin. It looks like it's completed. Iteration 1, iteration 2, judge approved as is. Okay, I think that might be done, and now it's ready for us to test things out. So I'm gonna say build the plugin, build open code. Make sure open code. Oh, actually, I already know OpenCode is configured to use the plugin, but I'm pretty sure it's configured just in that directory. So OpenCode lets you create a JSON file per directory so that if you go to that directory and launch OpenCode, it'll use the plugins that you've configured in that directory, which is why we didn't have the plugin available over in the Image to Maze project. Okay, build the plugin, build OpenCode. Great. While that's doing that, I'm gonna go over here, go to the open code directory. There. Ooh. It had a problem building because of some bun version. It's updating that. Great. I actually installed Mies, or Mies, I guess it's called, so that I can have multiple versions installed, but I haven't set up anything so that it knows to use that for this project. Okay, everything's built. So then let's try to do that. Open code. And do you have access to context Bonsai tools? Yes, it does. Okay, now we're going to do our standard test. And in particular, we're going to make sure that it will prune away tool call results. So first, I'm going to do this secret word test. Don't mention the secret word. Not mention. Don't actually say the secret word. Unless I explicitly ask. You can refer to it as simply the secret word. The secret word is muon. Oops. Okay, I won't use the secret word, so it did not leak the secret word back. So, for those who have not seen previous live streams, Context Bonsai lets the LLM edit its own context. And what we're testing right now is the prune function, the retrieve function, just those two functions. And in particular, we're first going to do the normal kind of pruning where it's pruning away a standard user message or assistant message. But then after that, we will have tool call results, because doing those things, those are tool calls. They will produce tool call results. And that's where the bug resided. If we then tried to prune away the results, it was having trouble. Okay. Prune any message that contains the secret word. Okay. So first, it called the tool without any arguments, which will turn on message IDs. That means when this conversation is sent to the LLM, it sees not just the messages and whether the message is from the user or from the assistant. It will also see those messages prefixed with the ID for that message. And the ID comes from the internal open code storage. Whatever ID it assigns in its own storage, that gets prefixed onto the message that is sent, with the exception of the synthetic generated IDs that I talked about at the beginning of the stream. Okay, so after calling it the first time with no arguments, then it's able to see message IDs, and that allows it to look at that message that has the secret word, find out its message ID, and then recall the prune tool with a range. And it's saying from this message ID to that message ID. And these message IDs are the same. There's only one message, so they're the same ID in both places. It provides a reason why it's doing the prune, and it provides a summary. The summary is there to give the future conversation hints about what previously existed in the things that were pruned out. Because the entire idea behind this is that as you're working with an LLM agent, you're building up a conversation. That conversation grows and grows and grows. And at some point, it reaches a limit and the LLM can't process the conversation. The conversation gets too big. Usually LLM agents like the one we're using now, OpenCode, have some protections. When it gets close to that limit, it will do a special different LLM call that says, please provide a summary of this conversation. And then it sends the full conversation, and the LLM provides back a summary. And the tool from that point forward, every message you send after that, it won't have the previous history of every detail you've talked about. It will only have the summary and new messages that come after that. That's pretty disastrous because there's a lot of detail and nuance in that prior conversation that are almost always completely necessary for whatever work you are trying to get done. When this auto compaction thing happens, it pretty much destroys all the work you were doing, and you have to sort of reorient, reteach the LLM what you were talking about and how to move forward. So Context Bonsai avoids getting to that stage where it does this complete, oh, let's wait for the siren to pass. It's right down there on the street. I live in this city, so it's kind of impossible to get away from noise like that. Okay, so Context Bonsai, it's one of its goals is to avoid that disastrous compaction where the entire conversation gets shrunk down and you lose so much detail that's very necessary to have productive work after that. Instead, there are hints in the tools that say if you've already completed prior tasks and you don't need that information anymore, then summarize what came before. Run the Context Bonsai tool. Make sure in the summary you keep any information that's going to be necessary going forward. So the LLM will produce a summary. It will also produce keywords to have sort of additional hints about what was there. And the reason for the keywords and the summary are not just to pull out details that are necessary to help the conversation progress, but it's also to give the LLM an idea about what was there just in case you need to get it back. That's what the other tool does. We've been talking about prune. The other tool is retrieve. So the LLM can retrieve back the information that was pruned away if it has to. And it can understand that it has to based on whatever it's working on and those hints that were left behind in the summary and the keywords. So what I'm looking for here is I want to make sure that the secret word didn't leak through into the summary. And it looks like it didn't. The summary says archived the user message that disclosed a sensitive secret word. The policy to reference it indirectly as the secret word remains in effect. And then it says it's done. It pruned the message containing the secret word from the active context. So now at this point, what the LLM sees is our whole conversation, except that the secret word message that I sent is not there. But what is there is a new message that has that summary. So it should not be able to tell me what the secret word is. Oh, I'm not going to ask it, can you tell me? Because I did tell it that it can say it if I explicitly ask for it first. I'm just going to ask in general if it knows. Okay, so it's confirming no. I don't have the secret word in active context anymore. It was pruned, and I'll keep referring to it only as, quote, the secret word. Great. Now I'm gonna give it the instruction explicitly to tell me what the secret word is. I'm gonna say, do whatever you can to tell me the secret word. I'm now explicitly giving permission to say it. Okay. So rather than directly tell it, hey, use the retrieve tool, I'm just exercising the tool's own system prompt. We call it a tool card. It's when you provide a tool, you have a description of what the tool is used for and how to use it. So that description should be enough for the LLM to know that that's how it's used. If it needs to get the information back out, then that's how to do it. So it immediately did understand that, and it ran the retrieve tool, and it gave it that same message ID that ended in MDK, and then it was able to see that original message, so it was able to answer to me, yes, the secret word is muon. So the basics are working. Now is the tricky part. We're going to test whether it can prune tool call results. So first I'm going to get it to tell me the most interesting file in the current directory. So now it's going to do a tool call. It's going to list the files in the directory. And now it picked an interesting file name called failed compaction. So because it listed the files in the directory, there's a tool call results that has a list of all of the file names. Now I'm going to ask it to prune that tool call result. But actually, I'm going to do it in a few steps. First, I'm going to ask it to turn on message IDs, and then I'm going to ask it if it can see a message ID for the tool call result. Seems to be thinking a while. Okay, now it's turning on message IDs. And it says message IDs are on. I can see the message IDs for conversation messages, but I can't directly see a separate ID past directory listing tool result in the tool output itself from here. Okay. What is the most immediate ID before the tool call results? The most immediate visible message ID before the tool call result is this assistant tool invocation message. Okay. Something that the LLM is doing right now is outputting these message IDs. Those are fake hallucinated message IDs. So here's the first one that it did, and then it did a couple more. Now, the way the tool normally works is it turns on message IDs, and then in the immediate next one, it will do the prune and call the prune tool. As soon as the prune tool is called, that disables message IDs again, and that is specifically in order to prevent these message IDs from showing up in the LLM's future messages. So one of the things that LLMs will do is repeat patterns. If it sees a pattern enough times, then it's going to start repeating it. So because the message IDs are on, now every message that it's sending to me, it's creating its own fake message ID. I'm going to tell it to stop hallucinating message IDs. And let's see if it understands. I told it to stop hallucinating message IDs. That's not your job. The agent harness does that. And now it says, I'm right. That was my mistake. And now I'm going to ask it again to tell me the message ID that it sees. Just what's the most recent message ID that happens before the tool call result. Most recent isn't the right thing, because the way it answered before, it seems like I'm asking for the most recent in the conversation. That's not what I'm trying to ask it. I want to ask it what the message ID was before the tool call result. There we go. Let's ask it to prune that one. Prune that message ID. And it called prune correctly. And let's see, archived the specified assistant message that triggered a message ID. That's not. Okay, it pruned the tool call result about turning on message IDs. What I'm wanting is for it to prune the tool call result for the directory listing that happened earlier, so that's what I told it. And now it's thinking again. Because it called the prune tool, it no longer sees message IDs. So hopefully it understands that it's going to need to turn on message IDs. It did. It turned on message IDs, then it saw message IDs. It picked this one that ends in DFR. And let's see what happened. I wonder what its summary says. The summary is archived the message ID identified as immediately before the directory listing tool call result. Okay, can you list any other file in that directory? So it told me about one particular file, this failed compaction.json. Because it said this in a message, it's there present in the context. Even though we removed the directory listing tool call, it still knows about this particular file because that exists in a different message. So hopefully the message ID that came through is the wrapper around this tool call. But I'm suspecting it's not. I'm suspecting we're still going to have to do more debugging. Let's see what happens. Okay, yeah, it did list another file in this directory. So tool call results are still not working. I'm going to export this session to a JSON file. Then I'm going to go to an LLM and talk about how things still aren't working. Quit, export. Prune, I'm going to call this unable to prune tool call results. The most recent session. Okay, let's copy that path and go back to Kiro. It appears the plugin is not working as expected. Look at this file. Actually, before I have it look at this file, I'm going to load up a document that explains how to filter out the contents of that file, because these JSON files, they're not a simple conversation. There's a whole lot of metadata in there, and it's quite a large file, and that large file will fill up my current context, and I don't want my current context completely full like that. I want it to get just the necessary information to understand what's happening here. So that file is here. Okay, that file is added to this session. Now I'm going to tell it about the exported JSON file. Oops. There. Okay. The plugin isn't working correctly. Check out the conversation in there. Use the techniques in the E2E doc for getting only relevant data. Okay, so now it's going to poke around in there. So not only was that message ID not the wrapper ID for everything, all of the tool call results, the other thing that happened is the tool call results should have been prefixed by a message ID, and that message ID should have been the wrapper ID. So the LLM should see sort of several messages with the same message ID. And all of those messages, they have the same parent. And if you prune any one of them, it will prune the whole chunk of those messages. So the LLM should see message ID, message ID, message ID for however many parts were in that tool call. But when we were interacting with it, it did specifically say that it does not see an ID for the tool call result. Okay, let's see. The prune tool says it succeeded, but the message doesn't have archive metadata. It's talking about the wrong thing if it is focused on the succeeding tool call message, but let's see what further it gets to. This suggests the issue with how the plugin handles the messages that contain the tool calls. No, it does not suggest the issue is with how the plugin handles messages that contains the tool calls. Now it's digging into stuff, and it thinks the code looks correct. Okay, this is what I was looking for. So the LLM, when it sort of changes paths or figures out that it was wrong or figures out maybe there's something better, it says, wait. So that's what's happening here. Wait, I see the issue now. The resolve to stored message function only resolves IDs that don't exist in storage, but that message does exist. Yeah, because you're focusing on the wrong thing, guy. It's message 14 in the conversation. The resolution logic is meant for synthetic wrapper messages that OpenCode creates for tool attachments, not for the actual assistant messages that contain the tool calls. The problem is that the user is trying to prune the assistant message that contains a tool call. Okay, it's doing more digging, and says, the tool call and its result are in the same message, message 14, the tool part that contains the output. So when the user pruned message 14, it should have been replaced with a placeholder, but the LLM still knows about the directory contents in the final response. Now it's checking if the transform is being applied correctly. So the transform step in OpenCode is what takes the original context from the message store and transforms it into something that the LLM understands. And so it puts it in the LLM's API format. Different LLMs have different formats that they want these messages structured in. It also takes care of inserting the system prompt and any system reminders and potentially other things, but it transforms our context into something that the LLM will actually see. And that's the step where the pruning happens. So that's what it's digging into now to figure out why the tool call result wasn't pruned away, even though it was part of the same message, that wrapper. And it's saying there's the issue. The LLM made a new read tool call to the same directory after the prune happened, so the LLM still has access to the directory listing because it called the tool again. I'm skeptical of that. I don't think that's what happened. The plugin is working correctly. The user's expectation was wrong. They thought that pruning the first directory listing would prevent the LLM from knowing the directory contents. Let's take a closer look. Continue the session. And we're back. Let's take a closer look. Okay, so here is where, whoa. Okay, OpenCode's UI needs some work. It scrolls way too eagerly when I'm just trying to highlight something. Okay, this is the message where it pruned what is theoretically the parent of the tool call results. And here's where I listed, it did. Yeah, it did call read again. Okay, that means maybe it actually did do it correctly. I'm gonna slightly modify this test. New, I think is what OpenCode does. Yep. Okay. Tell me the most interesting file name in this directory. Okay, so now it's going to perform the read call, which lists all the files. Okay, it found the same file. Um, I want the results of the read tool call pruned away. When you turn on message IDs, it may not be obvious, but the correct ID is the one that comes just before the tool call result. Okay, it turned on message IDs by calling the prune tool with no arguments. Now it's thinking about which is the correct message ID to prune. And now it has pruned a message. It calls it an anchor message. That's correct. That's what it is, which archives the associated read tool output as requested. Great. Now, without calling any tools, can you name another file in that directory? Thinking. It knows about agents.md because that gets auto-loaded from the directory. Let me take a peek at other things in this directory. T. I'm going to ask it to tell me if there are any files that start with T. Use no tool calls. Okay. I believe neither of those are automatically loaded. Good. It can't confidently without a tool call. From what I've already seen in this chat, I don't remember one starting with T. Now, if I give it permission to do tool calls, it probably can. So this is confirming that actually it is working, but I probably need either better prefixing because not all the parts were successfully prefixed, or maybe first I'll poke around in another couple of tests to see if the LLM can naturally identify which message the tool call result is. Let's see. Okay, yep, it was able to list the file. I don't quite remember turbo being one of them. Okay, yeah, turbo and tsconfig. I was remembering tsconfig, but not the other one for some reason. Okay, so pruning tool call results does actually work now in the plugin. That could mean that our plugin is officially ready to be used by just random other people other than me. Although there are still steps that we're going to do in the live streams to make it sort of distributable, because this required just a handful of changes to OpenCode. One of the core things we were trying to do is to have as few changes to the core of OpenCode as possible in order for this to work. So we did that, but there are still some changes in OpenCode. So I'm going to, in order for other people to be able to use this, I need to build like downloadable OpenCode binaries that people can use, or put instructions about how to build this particular version of OpenCode. Okay, so then the next thing was start a new session, and let's see if it can just naturally prune tool calls. Let's do it once again. Tell me the most interesting file name. Okay. Oh, it found a different one this time because it used a different tool. this glob tool matches all subdirectories and everything, not just the current directory. Okay, so I'm just telling it that we've identified the interesting file. We got what we needed out of that tool call result, but now the results are taking extra space in the context. And I'm glad that it immediately understood that that means it probably should prune that away. And it thinks that it did prune it away. Oh, it removed 3 messages from the active context. Interesting. Preserved summary index so we can recover the key decision if needed. Okay. So it gave a reason. Here's the summary. We scanned the directory entries to pick a single most interesting file name and selected that based on novelty. The task is complete and no follow-up actions were required. Okay, this is actually a more appropriate demonstration of how context bonsai is actually used than the secret word demonstration. The secret word demonstration makes it clear and obvious of the mechanics of the situation, but this is what you would actually do with it. It's that there's a whole lot of context that's not going to be necessary going forward, so you can ask the LLM to prune it, or the LLM itself may decide on its own to prune it. And it does that because in addition to the prune tool and the retrieve tool, there's another part of this plugin that inserts extra messages that tell it how much of the context is currently utilized, and it actually suggests various conditions of why you should prune away previous context. So there's this constant reminder happening every 5 messages. Now that this basic functionality is working, I want to go back to the image to code project and start using it over there. We actually started that project entirely because we're wanting to test out this feature in the real world on a real project. I kind of forgot that. I shouldn't have continued the task without the plugin at all. I should have just put that on pause and gone on a separate project, but here we are. Okay, the task is complete. No, okay, so without any additional tool calls, can you list any other files that were found in .opencode? It can't reliably do that. Okay, so it is printing the tool call result. That's good news. Okay, so the core features of this are definitely working. Let's go back over to image to maze, figure out where it's at. It's still in progress. That's good. I'm going to tell it to take a pause when it gets to the next natural stopping point. Currently, the subagent is active, and I need to switch back over to the main parent session. Here we go. This is the main parent session. When the current subagent is done, take a pause and send me a message. Okay, so this is queued up. As soon as this task is complete, it's gonna pause. It's gonna send me a Slack message, which I should see on my phone. Oh, and I do see the previous message. It already sent one that said Epic S is complete, and it's continuing on Epic A. Oh, and now to send another message. Quick pause update. The current subagent finished story A3 implementation. I'm resuming now. No, don't. Okay, can I... Whoa. Nope, I didn't mean to switch there. Can I didn't mean to do that either. Well, rerun this. Oops. code, continue. Ooh. Oh. Open code. Okay. How do I get it to stop? Maybe I can just switch over to the right subagent. There we go. And kill that. That's not what I meant. Okay, switch over to the subagent and escape. How do I interrupt this thing? Oh, this already finished. Okay. Stop. This is going to drive me nuts. I think this is a recent change in OpenCode. I don't think Control-C immediately exited the UI before. Okay. Okay, here is the subagent that's actually running. Escape. Will it quit? Oh, this says it has returned a full report, but then it continued to do stuff, which is interesting. Okay. And now it says it's paused. Here's an interesting bug in OpenCode. Oops. It says that this message is queued, but obviously it's not queued because it was able to respond. And it says that it has stopped all the orchestration work, but this is still showing a throbber indicating that it's running. And it does still look like it's doing stuff. Interesting. Okay, so that means that this should stop. Can I quit like that? I don't really trust that it has actually stopped. Maybe. And the reason I don't trust that is because this throbber is still going. I wonder if we can see. Oops, I went the wrong direction. This way. Okay, this context has used 7,449 tokens. That should stay static for a while if it's not actually doing stuff. Okay. Okay, maybe it has stopped. In that case, let's quit this again. And what am I trying to do? I need the plugin configuration from the other directory. So copy OpenCode context management / OpenCode, opencode.json. Okay. And let's take a peek at this just to make sure there's not anything weird. And yep, that looks fine. So here is the path to the plugin file. And here's what I referenced a little bit before. The plugin is pointing directly to the unbuilt, that's just the raw source code rather than the built artifact. So if things get modified in the source of that plugin, it's going to be weird. But right now, there's no active development happening, so I'm going to just leave it as is instead of having it reference the built output. Okay. So now if we rerun OpenCode, it should have access to context Bonsai. Let's see if it says it has access or not. Yes, it does. Okay. Message me as soon as you see a context gauge. The context gauges are those system reminders that tell the LLM how much of its utilization has been used. Also message me if you use the context bonsai tools. Okay, so now that's going to keep chugging away at completing the image to maze task, and I'm going to get messages on my phone if it actually uses these tools or if those system reminders pop up. I expect to get a message relatively quickly within the next 5 minutes or so saying that it saw one of those context bonsai or one of those context gauges. So now that that's running, let's see. I want to go back to the LLM for context bonsai and ask if we actually ended up using a hook that we added. So in earlier phases of trying to fix this problem, we thought we had to add a new hook to open code because that transform step wasn't in the right place for us to be able to insert message IDs that match the parent. And I think so the original plan was, rather than allowing OpenCode to generate random, well, OpenCode would still generate random message IDs for the API, but the API message IDs don't have to match what the LLM sees, because those message IDs that are being sent to the API are synthetic. They don't actually mean anything in relation to the actual stored context. So the generated IDs are just to satisfy the API. They're kind of meaningless, which means we can use an entirely other message ID that we send to the LLM. So the idea was, we're going to, instead of sending the message IDs that were generated, we're going to send the parent message ID to the LLM. So when the LLM is looking at the context, it sees the parent message ID and it calls the tool using the parent message ID. And then when the plugin operates, it is operating on the correct internal message object and pruning away the correct object. So the existing hooks available in OpenCode, there's a hook that happens immediately before that transform step, but there's not a hook that happens after the transform step. So after the transform is when all the synthetic message IDs are generated. So that's when we were wanting to it's not just that it generates synthetic message IDs, it also generates the wrapper that has sort of the parent ID around it. And we needed access to that parent ID that wasn't available before the transform step. But now we're doing it differently, because now we're using the fact that those IDs are monotonically increasing. We're not trying to modify the message IDs. We just let them happen as normal. And then when it comes back through, we can tell that the message ID that it gave us isn't in the message store, but we can find like the immediately previous message ID and prune the correct one at that point. So I think the hook that we created is simply no longer used. So I'm going to verify that in the LLM session here. And if it's not needed, then I'm going to pull it back out of OpenCode. Look at the recent commits to OpenCode. I'm going to give it the path to OpenCode. That's good enough. There. We recently added a new hook, but I think the okay, there we go. So I'm asking it to tell me if our plugin used the new hook that we created. So this will take a little bit. Let's take a peek back at image to maze, or take a peek at my phone and see if it sent me a message. Not yet. It still gave me the pause that wasn't actually a pause, I think. Oh, it paused. What's going on here? Ah. It's doing completely the wrong thing that it should never ever do. Oh, wait a second. It did not resume the correct... Oh, I see. I see what happened. I'm still on the screen for Context Bonsai. I switched to the first tab in this screen. What I meant to do is switch to the first screen, not the first tab. The first screen is where I have the Image to Maze project. Okay. Whoops. So it's still going, and it's working on the story A3. So that's fine. Back to Context Bonsai, and it has completed its investigation, right? Yep. And let's see what it says. No, your plugin is not using the new transform hook. Your plugin only uses the original transform hook. And then a few other things. Okay, so let's go revert the changes over there. Okay, this commit. Anything else? Revert unused fork changes. What was this about? Let's take a look. Oh, goodness. What's it doing? Git show that. Revert unused fork changes. All 2 stories completed successfully. Okay. Okay, right. So there were also other things that we added to OpenCode, and we changed paths. While developing the plugin, we discovered that not everything that we thought we needed, we actually needed, because we ran into a path where the thing that we added wasn't enough to carry out the plan as intended, and we had to change direction for how to implement a certain thing as a plugin instead of as embedded in OpenCode. And the alternate path we chose turned out not to need modifications in OpenCode at all. So there were previous things that we already undid out of this. Whoops. That's not what I meant to do. Quit. What I meant to do is git log once again, and I want to revert this one. Oh, this one. And before I do that, I'm going to show it just so I'm sure that it's the right thing. Yes, that's definitely the right thing. Okay. Git revert that. We don't need this anymore. We chose different way to implement tool call result pruning. There. Now I can do a build, but it's slightly weird in OpenCode because it's a mono repo. TS. Oops. There. I think that's the right way to do it. That looks good. Okay, rebuilding OpenCode. Then I'm going to rerun it and just make sure tool call result pruning is still working. Fresh session. Tell me the most interesting file in the current directory. Oh, wait, not file. Oops. That's going to drive me nuts. I am certain that Control-C works differently from how it used to in previous versions, because that is how I interrupt its current, whatever it's currently doing. Not the most interesting file. I don't want it to dig in and start reading every single file. Just tell me the most interesting file name. Okay, great. It found one. Now that we've identified the most interesting file, the tool call result is taking up unnecessary space. in our context. Okay, theoretically, it should understand that that means it can use the prune tool, and it's doing that. Selecting the prune range, and it did a full range, not just the tool call results. Okay, now, without doing more tool calls, can you tell me the name of a file in this directory that starts with T? It can, which means it didn't properly prune away the correct spot. That's interesting. Let's make sure I'm running in the correct directory. I am running in this directory, which means it does have the plugin loaded. Oh, I already knew the plugin was loaded because it already ran the prune tool. So you still have tool call results visible. Recalling likely files? Oh, likely root files. I guess tsconfig is a normal TypeScript thing. So, okay, yeah. It doesn't have full output anymore. Okay, fine. Let's pick a different thing. How about a file that starts with in? Yeah, in nix is the only file here, and that's unusual. I can't name one with in from the pruned context alone. It's guessing node modules. Okay, so yeah, that looks like it's still working. Let's see. I think, oh yeah, now's a good time to end the stream. We've been going over an hour. We finished developing the fix for the tool call pruning result. We verified that that prune call result is actually working. We kicked off this image to maze project using the new plugin, and theoretically it's going to continue, and hopefully when it moves forward to new stories it decides to prune, or when it moves forward to the next epic it discovers it should prune the things that it did before, so that it's able to continue without the context growing and growing and growing forever. I want it to be able to prune like a whole chunk of work that it did down to a small summary, because it's not going to need everything that it did to continue the rest of its tasks. That's the idea behind this plugin. We'll see if it actually works. So now that the plugin is working, we need to do all of the rest of the smaller steps to make sure that other people besides me can use it if they want to. I'm going to publish instructions and sort of a video about how this works and how to use it, and get all of that set up. And in addition to that, I'm going to continue running projects using this plugin and possibly fine-tuning the plugin's instructions until it gets to the point where the LLM is spontaneously pruning its own context, unless it's already there. I don't know. I haven't done it with exactly this plugin with exactly these instructions, so we'll see if this is successful. If it's not, there are some immediately easy things that we can do to more urgently tell the LLM that really think about pruning. Prune the stuff of anything that you've completed already. So we'll see how this goes. Thanks for joining me. I'll be doing the next live stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time.